right, here goes.
Let's do it.
Hello. How are you?
Dude, I am outstanding.
Outstanding.
It's a beautiful, crisp, sunshiny day here in Overland Park. Fall is upon us. The leaves are falling. The temp is dropping. And listen, you got nothing to complain about right now. It's October 13th, the year. It's 2022, folks. Welcome aboard. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast, episode 625.
Yep. I am Mike, and that is Robbie. And here we go. 625 podcasts, man. Nice job.
Yeah, nice job to you, too. A little pat on the back. So, it's funny, before we get in our intro, sometimes, you know how Hayden is. The kids just spit it to you straight. Yeah. And, you know, we had, I think, what was probably our highest downloaded month ever last month. Yep. And, yeah, I mean, and so, which is awesome. Like for two guys like us who put out a halfway mediocre podcast twice a week, you know, we're the guys winning. We're the age group winners, right? Of the 75 to 79 age group, at Ironman in Florida, you know, where we get purse because we're the only ones on the internet, because we're just do it because we stick around. But I think you sent me a screenshot. I said, Hayden, guess how many people listened to our podcast last month? And he said 5,000. I was like, no, dude, not 5,000. He goes, okay, good. That's a low number. What about 100,000? I was like, oh my gosh, like you, because when he has no concept of like what is high and what is low. Usually he like drops down to millions, but yeah, we're still here. We've been doing it for 6 years. We love it. We always do it twice a week. Used to do Mondays and Thursdays, but we've been flexible. Now it's Tuesday, Thursday, sometimes Friday, but always twice a week. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, and their time is very valuable. So we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do a lot of race recaps and quite a few race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings on this planet, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I both work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking at their very first 5K or sprint, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to Kona, and everyone in between and from all over the world. We'll use the feedback loop we have with them from Training Peaks, text messages, emails, phone calls, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also utilize our Facebook group for content. That's Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question, we'll let you right in. Amazing community and outstanding resource for every level triathlete. It really is an awesome community of people, solid culture in there, and people willing to lend a helping hand. So if you got questions, ask them, and don't be a lurker. Be a contributor, and we'll go in there about once a month and do a little bit of a Q&A and try to do our best to answer all of your questions live, or at least live and recorded on the podcast. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have one agenda, and that's to do our best to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, and I know you got something to say after this, but that reminded me when you were talking about our podcast being 75 plus age groupers. I think we're kind of like I used to listen to rock and roll music back in the 70s. I don't know if you remember that decade, but
I wasn't alive. So I know. I have no recollection.
You could kind of feel it, right? You know, your karma was. But it's sort of like a rock and roll band that you discover, and you really like them when they're kind of new, and then eventually they come out with the ballad, and then they get famous. It's like that's when we're sort of like that podcast people maybe discover this is sort of an acquired taste. And they like it, but sooner or later we'll sell out and come out with a ballad, and then everybody will know about us, right? 10 years from now, maybe 3.
It's definitely wasn't we definitely didn't put out a hit single on our first record.
No,
we're guys, like you, we're like the late bloomers. You never like, you're like, man, have you heard this album? It is amazing. Like, where'd these guys come from? You're like, well, they've been around for 14 years, traveling,
Exactly.
to Asia. It's like, they were super popular in Asia with this techno music, and everybody loved them. And kind of like, what's his name? The dude from Baywatch, what's his name? Who was like
Hasselhoff?
the gigantic hit in like Germany. Yes, that's right. That was us. And now we're like, just slowly, climbing our way up to the C team, the B team. That's kind of our jam. But our jam, most importantly, it is keeping you happy and healthy. And one of the ways we're trying to do that, we're doing something a bit different this year. We haven't offered it really in the past, but we're offering training plans for this next year. They are race specific, but as with all things, training plans, if you don't find one, like we're doing Ironman Texas, Ironman Chattanooga, Ironman Wisconsin. We're also doing an Ironman Wisconsin 70.3 training camp, and you got like a training camp and training plan package. And then for 70.3s, we're doing Wisconsin, Des Moines, and Chattanooga. Obviously, if you're not doing one of those 3 races, but your course is similar, like you got a hilly course like Wisconsin, you got a rolling course like Des Moines and Chattanooga, you can always still utilize the plan. Or if you're interested in just in general having a plan created for you, you can always reach out to us or email Summer at c26operations@gmail.com. But those are going to go online and open for business here in about a week. They're all delivered through Training Peaks. Each plan is specific to the demands of the race you've chosen, so they're all different. The Chattanooga plan, the Wisconsin plan, the Texas plan, they'll all be different. And then with that purchase, you'll get a kind of an 8-week training block to prepare you for it. The plan will begin January 1st. And then one of the cool things we're doing that's maybe it's not unique. I'm not really sure what other people do with their training plans, but every month we'll have a Zoom call with so let's say you signed up for Ironman Chattanooga. Well, January, everybody in that group doing the same race, hop on a Zoom call with me or Mike, and we'll kind of go through 6 to 8 different, you'll have 60 different Zoom calls over the course of your training. We'll go over different things. Like the first one, we'll go over frequently asked questions, how to, go about your year, going over the plan layout. Then the next one will be about kind of base phase. Next one, build, race specific, testing, all these kind of things. So that isn't only going to help you when you're training, but it's also very educational, which is one of the things that you and I both like to do. Coaches are teachers, first and foremost. And so it'll kind of be to also learn. And then since it is a training plan, one of the biggest questions we always have is, will you be making adjustments for my training or for my, other races? And no, it's just a straight training plan. But however, during the first Zoom call, we will provide a lot of information, even some sample weeks on how to taper from maybe a different 70.3 in Olympic on your way to an Ironman, and maybe how to do, taper for an Olympic or half marathon on your way to a 70.3. So we'll help you work around those and give you some good, sage, experienced advice. And that'll lead you all the way up to your race day. And then you will have a week race week email that'll help kind of outline things for you. And obviously the last Zoom call that you'll have for your race will be about race strategy, how to execute, going over how to get your power numbers, heart rate, whatever it is you want to do. And we'll link to that on Instagram. We'll link to that in the show notes. And then you can also find more information on our website that will link to that as well, c26triathlon.com. So those are coming at you. And again, we've never done it before because, you and I both and other coaches, we prefer to just work with one-on-one with people. That's how we get our cup filled. But we do recognize that, some people don't want that. That's not how they fill their cup. They'd rather kind of coach themselves, but or they don't have the financial means, really, which is the most important piece. You don't have the financial means to afford good coaching, but you want a good community, you want education, you want a great training plan to get you going, and you want someone you can kind of hear and have a sounding board with, with the Facebook group and the Zoom call. So we figured we'd do that this year. We'll see how it goes. But again, if you want more information, go to our website, or if you have questions in general already at the gate, or you want to see a sample week of what it may or may not look like, you can email Summer at c26operations@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the community piece of it. I think it'll offer an opportunity to meet new people and that are doing your race. And that's always awesome. People like that when they show up at the races and see C26 gear and get to meet new friends and whatnot. But we also talked about it on the last Kona cast about how Blumenfeld and Eden have been training together. And it's always nice to, I really do think that there's something in there. Back in the day, man, we used to train a lot out at Natchez Trace and the lake, and we always had a group of people. And I was thinking about that the other day. Is like, man, I do think that was sort of a driver in some of my better races. It's not always the most comfortable place, but I think that's the hard part about triathlon sometimes, is getting out of your comfort zone and going out and working with some people that are maybe a little bit better, or going to push you on certain days when you don't want to push, or whatever the case may be. So that's what we're always looking for, right? Is, I think, community on some level. And that's really been kind of one of the biggest hidden benefits of everything that we do, really. Is that people?
Oh, dude, it's the biggest benefit. Like you and I as coaching are now a backseat to basically, like, we've got athletes that have been with us for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and they'll all tell you, like, the best thing about it is the team and the community. And we're going to talk about burnout today, but that is one of the biggest pieces, I think, of burnout. And again, we'll talk about here in a minute. But a rising tide raises all ships. And that's kind of what, having a good community and a group, to help, text or, in a Facebook group. I mean, hell, we've got athletes doing North Carolina 70.3 this weekend. And the reason I think we have 10 or 11 racing it. And I think 6 or 7 of them basically only signed up for it. A lot of them are like 2 weeks after post Ironman, maybe 3 weeks after. They only signed up for it because they got so close at one of our run camps. But they all decided to just, do a race where they could all come together and race and hang out. And that's all they said. I mean, I got a text message from one of them about, honestly, 10 minutes before the cast. And they said, North Carolina is going to be a great big team race. And Dell is hosting an after race party. We have some wonderful, kind people on our team. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. We do. We have awesome people. You and I are just lucky enough to kind of be, the wizard behind the Oz, and enjoy things. So yeah, that's a huge piece of it. And I honestly think, like, as we kind of go into the topic today about burnout, isolation and lack of community and continuity with people who have kind of like-minded goals, not just in, online, but in person. We it's that time of year where people are burnt out from races, but a couple weeks ago, I kind of pulled our C26 athlete page and kind of said, hey, what do you want to see from us more next year? What do you want to see? Do you want a new hub? Do you want more camps? Do you want more educational opportunities? Do you want more Zoom calls? Do you want, more shirtless sessions with Mike doing yoga? And of course, that was number one. But the rest of them was, we want more camps. We want more opportunities to see our teammates. And to me, that it wasn't a shock, but it spoke volumes in that we are, 2020 changed everything for good and for bad. And I think one of the biggest pieces that I think people are finding is, people are going back to the office, people are traveling more, but it's made it to where we all got comfortable for whatever reason, again, for good and for bad. I think a lot of it was kind of a protective mechanism or fear, but that's all. Isolation and being lonely and not kind of finding your tribe is a huge, huge deal that leads to massive burnout and just frankly general unhappiness. And it leads to, loss of energy, loss of motivation. You just don't want to do anything. And burnout it happens because you overdid it for too long. Right. And a lot of athletes do this in so many ways. You work too much. Like, we talk about this all the time on the podcast when we talk about stress is stress. Right. And yes, we all have stress in our lives, from our personal life and from our professional life. Right. And then that's just kind of stuff you can't get away from for the most part. Again, a lot of us have trouble in our professionals. I'm for one of them. I struggle with, work boundaries and not being a workaholic, which, I'd probably admit that I kind of am. So a lot of it is our choice, but a lot of the stuff I don't say purposely, but we whatever it's consciously or unconsciously submit ourselves to additional stress on ourselves that we have no reason to do. You watch the news too much. You flip through social media too much, right? Or you surround yourself with, terrible people, right? Who just complain and are negative, and you become who you hang around with. Like, I don't know what the exact quote is, but you're like, you are the sum of the 5 people you come into contact with the most. Mm-hmm. And that's just what happens, right? And so when you talk about burnout and how I think I even mentioned this in the weekly email we did earlier this week, and I don't think I mentioned this on Tuesday, but It is the best time of year to disassociate racing and goals from training and start to associate training with health and fitness and wellness, because that is what is sustainable. And so many athletes, when you look at, I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years, and I've seen all kinds of different kind of burnouts. And one of the things, they even touched on this yesterday in our Zoom call, was one of the biggest reasons, and one of the more frequent back and forth or arguments I get in with athletes over the course of the year is forcing downtime on them, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. And you know how triathletes are, they're type A. I got to keep going, or I'm going to lose all my fitness. I got to keep training. I got to keep doing this. I'm like, no, you don't. Or you can, but towards the end of the year, you're not going to want to take a week or two off. You're going to take 3 months off, right? Because you're done. You have burnt yourself out. You have overdone it. You have like two camps of athletes. You have one camp that it's like, the training is all about how much you can do. The ones that are running 24 miles before, their Ironman, or biking 7.5 hours and then run 2 hours off it. And you have that camp, right? That training and success is all about how much you can do. And then you have the other camp, which is pretty much us and plenty of other people. We're not just the only ones to do this. A lot of people do this. Is the right amount of training is the amount of training you can actually adapt and recover from. Most people do way too much. They stress way too much. And this is the best time of year, again, when volume can go down, right? Because you're not racing. Make small incremental changes. Don't try to make drastic changes. We'll go through that here in a little bit, but you can, the time is now to make a difference, right? In your future, right? In your future, in 2023, don't start thinking about, how can I, qualify for Kona in July? How can I be on the podium in September? How can I, PR in next November? Start thinking about, in order to get better next year, what can I do right now to set myself up next year for better boundaries, treating myself better, right? Taking more time for myself, working out in the morning instead of saying I'm going to work out in the evening. And we all know that doesn't happen because everybody's shelled. So there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different signs of burnout. And hopefully over the course of this podcast, we can help you either identify them or find ways to get around them and avoid them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got, because now's the time of year, right, when you get done. And I've had a few new athletes come in recently and are looking forward to racing Ironman maybe in a year or 10, 11 months or whatever it may be. And, that's a long time. I mean, none of us can really, and you shouldn't sustain, like, it isn't like you just start building right now and then just build. I mean, like this massive thing all the way. It's got to be, like for me right now, I just did this and I'm fully planning on doing Ironman Wisconsin next year right now. And I just finished it about a month or so ago. And for me, it's just all about getting out for a 20-minute run sometimes, it's just sort of like you can't sustain certain levels, or most people can't, I guess, unless you really have some kind of understanding of what's going on. And like I always talk about liking to work at different things. And like you said, for me, really the best thing I could probably do right now is continue to get up early and continue to try to be a better morning workouter. And if that means I only run 15 minutes or 20 minutes, that's a good step in the right direction because it's a long play, right? And I was thinking about this, as far as, because, unhappiness and is out there a lot, and people go up and down with it. And I was thinking about, what is that unhappiness really? It's kind of like, it's not having a clear grasp on a purpose. And because there's so many peripheral distractions and things of that nature. And if you have like a thing you wanted to do, maybe you really want to do well at Ironman, or you really want to be a great painter or artist or whatever the hell it is, if you're not going to that first, then there's a disconnect, like what is it? Because it's sort of like you're saying, you go to your phone and you're everything, there's so many distractions just waiting. And if you haven't clarified what that purpose is or what makes you happy. And because it's almost like, I've talked about it before, but like when I was a drummer, and it was so exciting to me to say to guys when we were hanging out at the bar or whatever, hey, let's start a band. And then we just sit there and draw shit on napkins and stuff like that. And we'd never go do a rehearsal. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like you have these ideas, and like you referenced it in Starbucks before, where people get together and they talk about all these great business ideas and nobody takes a step towards it. And why? What is that? You know, it's like, is this really something? Are you just looking for a little distraction or a little energy from the idea instead of actually finding enjoyment and purpose in the process? And for me, that's always been a struggle. And that's why I say is like, because what do we talk about all the time? It's like, how do I get pumped up to get back? I'm going to sign up for a race. And then that lasts for about 3 or 4 weeks until you don't do anything. And then it's like, damn, then that becomes a burden. So I always just feel like this idea of doing something today that really makes you look forward to doing something tomorrow. And a lot of times for me, that's sort of going into a project, whatever it may be, and saying to yourself, just go in there for 10 minutes, go in there for 15 minutes, instead of knowing that you have 40 hours of work and trying to do it all in 2 days, because then it makes it suck. You know, I've been in the creative world for a long time, whether it's through video production or all kinds of things like that. And some of the worst things some of the worst times of that have been, you know, the metaphor of sort of staring at a blank canvas. The options are endless, but starting is the hardest part. So sometimes you just have to throw a little paint on there and walk away. And that, because it'll clear you up and it'll be just like, oh, that was fun. Then you kind of think about it, and then you start like a little kindling, and then you come back and do a little more and then walk away. And I think that's a good analogy for triathlon right now, especially if you're struggling, is don't think you have to go out and run an hour tomorrow because you're behind. You know, that doesn't work. Get out there and just sort of run and see how it feels, and then leave it in a place where you're like, you feel pretty good about it. Man, that was kind of fun. I kind of enjoyed that. And then just sort of start building. It's really about rewiring your brain a little bit and doing it in ways. And I've been doing that in the pool because, you know, after Wisconsin, like I was talking about before, I swam a lot before that, and I felt like I got pretty strong and pretty good. And I haven't had that same motivation, so I'll just get to the pool and maybe, you know, get 1,000 to 1,500 and be like, okay, I like that. I didn't hate trying to squeeze in 4,000, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So to me, it's just biting off little chunks and go in the right direction. And that's what I try to tell people right now, my athletes. I'm trying to, you know, give them more of an opportunity for having a little range in there. It's like, oh, I'm trying to do 15, 20 minutes or 30 or whatever. And then if you feel good, go 35, but don't try and go 50 or an hour or hour and a half or whatever it may be. Just keep it fun still. Keep it, you know, light, and come back tomorrow with like some enthusiasm.
And this we always talk about this in January, but I think you can start doing this now, right? Because that's a big thing, is everyone wants to make drastic changes. And I say this a lot, and I think I said this on the Zoom call Wednesday, or maybe it's my weekly email, that, you know, more people spend more time planning to start and less time actually starting. You know, in 2 weeks, I think things are going to clear up for me and I'll be ready to go. Really? Mm-hmm. Do you know that? Why can't you get out and make 30 minutes a day? You know, everyone wants to and then they want to make a drastic change when something does happen, like January 1st. Let's make really drastic changes. You know, when we talk about time management, or I said this to an athlete the other day, I just don't have enough time. I was like, you don't have enough time. Send me a screenshot of your screen time this week. Mm. It was 6.5 hours. I said, what do you mean you don't have enough time? 6.5 hours. They said,
they actually said,
oh, no, you know what? Yeah, so you know what? You're right. I'm going to take that down to 2 hours. I said, no. Take it down to 6. Take it down to 6 hours. There's 30 minutes, right? So you're taking 30 minutes away of the screen time and you're donating 30 minutes back to yourself. Boom, right? You got it. 30 minutes for you. You do that every single day for the week, right? And you just donated, even though not donating, it's just making time for yourself, 3.5 hours to you. And that 3.5 hours is more than you've been training each week for the last month. So you don't have to make drastic change. And then after maybe a few months, then maybe donate 40 more minutes, right? Instead of 30, then 50 more minutes, right? But everyone wants to make drastic changes and then they wonder why it's not sustainable, right? Or they get burnt out because they are lazy January, February, March, April, May, and then they go all in because they're afraid they won't finish the race. And they buckle down and train June, July, and August, and then boom, September happens, and bye, see you later. They're done because they burn the wick too fast and too long, and there's nothing else to go, right? And so it's incredibly stressful, right, for athletes when they do that to themselves. That's why you don't bounce back, right? Because and again, a lot of it again is association, right? You go to the well too many times, and then you end up dry. And you see the professional ranks, you see in the age group ranks, that there's only so much your body can handle. And I think that's one of the biggest things that age group athletes have to understand about themselves is there's only so much stress and energy you can handle. More isn't always better. And how to balance things out to where you can train 50 to 52 weeks out of the year instead of training 40 and then taking 3 months off because you're burnt out, or you got sick or you got hurt. Now is the time to invest in yourself. It's middle October. Don't wait for January. But we got Thanksgiving and Christmas, and you know how that goes. Yeah, I know Thanksgiving. I know that goes. Thanksgiving is the greatest holiday on the face of this earth, and everyone overlooks it and goes to Christmas. So I know how that goes. But the truth is, and most people say, well, you know what? I'm gonna eat in Thanksgiving and Christmas. So why would I try to lose weight right now? Okay, you know what? You're right. Gain another 10 between now and, in December, and then, try to drop 20 instead of dropping 10, or just break even. We always want to wait, right? And then we want to go drastic change. I don't want to drop 5 pounds. I want to drop 25, and I want to drop it in 2 weeks. We want everything right now. And when you don't get it, waiting 24 hours now is like how we used to wait for 2 weeks. It's like I don't wait till Amazon can't even get it to me today. I've got to wait 2 weeks. And our culture has become that, like, to a T in everything that we do in training and in life. And you want to do it right now. That's it, period. And I mean, remember back in the day when you would have to, you're in high school and you get your own line for your room. Mm-hmm. And you had to set up a time where you're going to call, and then you had to ask your parents to have information. And then I'm going to call, and I get 20 minutes. I got 20 minutes tonight with, this girl I'm going to talk to. And in my room, I'm and now you can just text, 8-year-olds are texting people that they're going to go to school with in 5 hours. It's things are way too accessible all the time. And that, I think, is actually jaded us to what it's like to have that kind of innate feeling of long-term process-oriented development. And then when we actually have to do it, we go way too hard because we want things done quicker. And then that's what leads to burnout. And that's why you see the same thing too with athletes or athletes that come in that we start coaching that we're the epic workout bunch, right? Everything's got to be epic and big, right? It's got to be bigger, bolder, faster, longer, harder. That's how you get better. And then they get hurt and they get burnt out and they wonder why. It's about small, incremental bumps and changes day after day after day. And you can't go all in today because you got another one tomorrow, right? Not an epic one, just another one, right? And so if you're a person who it's the end of the year, because this is I think the most sensitive time of year for burnout for people, because you're either burnt out from racing or you didn't race because you got burnt out before it. And, it's an excellent time of year to kind of do some self-reflection and inventories. Why did I get burnt out? Was my relationship with the sport too toxic? Did I expect too much, which I think we have a podcast about this. Were your expectations of what triathlon or Ironman was going to do for you, was it too much? Was it unfair? Because you put so much effort into what crossing an Ironman was going to finish line, and then you got depressed. A lot of time isn't just depressed. It's just it's an expectation letdown. You thought Ironman crossing the finish line was going to change your life, but you didn't spend the 8 months while you trained for it trying to change your own life. You expected scroll down the red carpet, cross the finish line, get a medal, have someone, take off your timing chip, not get a Snickers, not get pizza, not get Coke, and then, expect for your life to be changed. It doesn't work that way. You got to work for it every single day. And I think we kind of joked about it without kind of knowing where the conversation was going at the beginning of the podcast. 625 podcasts. We are not the best podcast on the planet. but also not the worst. But we already probably outlived 99% of people who start triathlon related podcasts or just podcasts in general. Because we just kept doing it. We didn't set high expectations. We don't check our numbers obsessively. We do it because we love it. We do it because you and I like talking to each other. You know, the two best friends who spend 2 hours plus a week actually speaking to each other. Yeah, I think people would be shocked how little you and I text. Yeah. You know, it's like most people like text 24/7, or it's like, no, because we actually get to talk, right? And have like, you know, meaningful conversations, like, you know, that they're recorded, we put out in the universe, or, you know, we talk, you know, for a good while before the podcast even starts. Like we're around because we kept our ideals in the right way. And to be fair, like we didn't do it on purpose. We kind of accidentally, you know, kind of rolled our way into a lot of this, but it was because we tried to stay true to why we did it. You know, we don't do sponsors and ads because we don't want to have to answer to somebody else. We don't want to have to be disingenuous. We don't have to want to mess with our flow. We just want to talk about life, right? And what we're going through, what our athletes are going through, and things that might help people, right? And that's allowed us to be doing this. I mean, you and I both agree, like, when we did our first podcast, I remember exactly where I was sitting in the spare bedroom, this townhouse in Overland Park, where I actually have come back to now. And Hayden was like 10 weeks old, you know, and you had to like, you know, tell me what Amazon to order, or what headset to order on Amazon. It was like $16. You're like, all right, you got to plug it into this port in the side of your computer. And then we're going to download this thing called Skype, and then you're going to talk into it. And, you know, this is what we're going to do. And I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. This sounds like a great idea. I'm not really sure how it's going to go, but we'll dedicate time to it. And all we did was say, we're going to do it twice a week. That's it. Mm-hmm. Not we're going to make $1 million with ads. Not we're going to, you know, have 5 million downloads by year one. Not that we're going to change the world, right? But that we just wanted to do it because we thought it might resonate with people, but we know it'll resonate with us. And so we did it for the right reason, and that's why we're still here. That's why I don't blink when I think we'll make it to 1,000. You know, and so that's the way to think about training and think about life, is like, you know, we set everything's, you know, everyone asks, like, you know, well, you know, let's scale it. You know, how can you scale? We used to get the question all the time when we started out. That doesn't seem like a good business model. What do you mean you're not doing ads? How do you make any money? You know, everything's about scaling it, or I can 10x that, or I can do this. And you're like, well, what if we just love it? You know, what? Because then as soon as you try to monetize, or you have like these unreal expectations from the podcast you do, or from your 30-minute run, right? Yeah, I'm gonna go out there today, and I know I'm gonna run faster today, and then you don't. Whose fault is that? It's not your body's, it's your mind's. It's your decision making, and it's like we've lost touch with. You know, we talked about. I told you a little story on air this morning about coaching, and Hayden has very first year of baseball. He had never played before. He's on a team with everyone else who played last year. And so I got him lessons before the season started. He ended up being probably one of the best hitters on the team because he practiced and he got lessons and he learned to love it. But after the season was over, I walked up to his coach and I said, I can't thank you enough. You were the absolute perfect coach for Hayden this year. And he's like, oh, thanks. And he said, why? And I said, because you just let him play and you let him have fun. And I had this opposite conversation with my neighbor whose coach was coaching 8-year-olds and yelling at him and screaming at him and, you know, grabbing him and not caring. And I was like, it's interesting because you don't understand how important a coach's role in an athlete's life is, because they could end up hating a sport they should love. And that in adults, like, you know, we should parent ourselves like we parent our kids. You know, did you win? You shouldn't say that. Did you have fun? Yeah. Did you learn something? Yep. Perfect. Moving on. Because you know what now he wants to do? He wants to play baseball next year because he had fun, right? And he had fun and he enjoyed it and he loved it. And somehow along the way, we've lost that in the expectation driven Strava addictive Facebook, social media, like likes and PRs. And I got to kill it every time. And I got to keep up with the Joneses, or if not, I'm falling behind. And it's like, we've really just kind of lost. It's a burnout of the heart. Right. And then you spend 2020 and 2021 by yourself. Right. That's not sustainable. Get out of your house. Go do something. Run with people. Bike with people. You know, don't put your don't stare at your device. Like, think about how long people stare at their, I'm sorry, I'm talking so much today, dude. Like, I apologize. It's like, stop staring. Like, if you think about how much people stare at their devices, how many times look at their watches while they run, how often they stare at a screen while they're on their bike, how often they stare at the screen on their bike computer, how often they are, it's everything. We need to start disconnecting and stop and disassociating, and instead associating things with benefits, right? That are not connected to, a new KOM or a new PR, but just life and living and wellness and being happy.
Yeah. You done?
I'm done. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
But
I got the passion this morning.
That's good. But going back to the podcast, I mean, one of the early things because everybody struggles with this, right? When you start a podcast, you're like, oh, topics, send an outline, go back and forth. And we decided at some point, we're like, yeah, screw that. We're just going to do it because we like it. And that's what saved it. And we also discussed this idea of, and I think this is what, I worked in the media for so long. It's always called, teasing or holding back information and all that shit. And, you set it up. This is how you do an Ironman. And here, we're not going to give you the last bit unless you sign up for whatever. And we decided at some point, really early, I remember it was like our third podcast or something, we're like, are we going to hold back? Nope. We're just going to say whatever. Nope. We're going to give out all the information we know, everything that comes to our mind. We're not going to hedge and try to sneak things around and whatever. And that saved the podcast. And I think because that let us have an open conversation and it let us be free and it was something we enjoyed instead of trying to always, manufacture this perfectionism, quote unquote perfectionism. And I mean, perfectionism is the enemy in a lot of ways with everything we do, whether it's training or because when I think about perfectionism, when I think about, a lot of times I've done video projects over the years and I mentioned it earlier, but before I started, I always want it to be the best video ever, right? In my mind and really move people or whatever. And that really locks me up, man. It's like if I have a project, it's sort of like studying for a final. Instead of just going in there and plucking around for, a month ahead of time, if I have a month deadline, I'll usually end up knocking that thing out in the last 3 days. And it just, all it does is sit on my head and stress me out instead of, eventually I learned to take it in stages. So if I have a video project for somebody over the years, and it was like that I need to make for someone else, it's always been stressful because, it's doing it for somebody else, and then, but I kind of got to the point where how am I going to do this for myself and make it, because they're paying me, right, to develop what I want to develop instead of, they could have anybody just do exactly what they want. But a lot of times I do it less scripted and I look for emotion and things like that. So eventually I figured out, okay, what's the theme? How am I going to pull this together? And I'll always just start with some music beds or whatever. And I'll just listen to them over and over and let that go for a few days. And then I'll just start putting things out and let that go or whatever. So it becomes less of a pressure and you can kind of go through it. And I think there's always a good analogy there for training. And, people, if you want to be Michael Phelps and somebody like that and just grind yourself to the ground until you absolutely hate what you're doing, that's one thing. And I think so many people have done that. You talked about with that story with Hayden and how he liked it and now he's done for the season and he's going to come back next year and want to do it. Well, now, of course, so many schools or like programs, they have whatever AAU or kids are playing baseball all year. They're playing basketball all year. And how can they not get burned out on that? I just, I was talking to somebody the other day, we played 3 sports, multiple sports, and I think, they have kids and some of their kids were relegated to playing the same sport all year and they ended up getting college scholarships or whatever. And then when they're done with college, that's the end of it. And what was the one thing they all of them said is they regretted that they didn't play basketball too, or they didn't do another sport because they would have been good at it. But the idea was to make them the best and then get the scholarship and what have you. But they didn't have the whole experience of playing basketball with their friends or football with their friends because they were focused on baseball the whole time or whatever it was. So I don't know. I think a lot of this comes back to the saying, do something that you like. Do something, scratch your own itch. And that's what we've done with this podcast. We made it ours. And then, hundreds, dozens of other people have kind of latched onto it. But really,
that's right.
It's like you have to do what you want to do, whatever that is today, and I think we just get caught in this trap. Like, well, society says I should be doing this or whatever. Well, or Ironman training programs say I should be doing this. Why can't you just do what you want right now? If you're having a hard time getting into the program of like a routine and you're planning on doing a big race next year, just go do something you want to do today. It's pretty simple, really. But we cloud it up with like, well, that's not the way they say that I'm supposed to do it. And this crosses over into everything. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they frankly said, my life got a lot easier when I decided that I wasn't going to give a fuck what other people thought.
Yeah.
And I just really like that, because I think we all want that, right? We all want to be able to just kind of go with our own flow and really be, to use an overused word, authentic about who we are and what we want to do, instead of always kind of shoehorning our way into somebody else's program all the time. And I think that's what, as far as a coach, that's kind of where I'm at all the time, is like, come on, man. If you're hating this right now, we got to figure out some other way, because we know you want to go and get better, and we know you want to be stronger and happier and healthier, and you want to race well. But if this doesn't work right now, let's figure something out for the next, couple weeks or month or whatever. And let's get that juice back and get that enthusiasm and find out why you're really doing this. Because that's really the most important thing to me. It's like not always about like stacking up a million athletes. I just want to, connect with people and help them figure out how to have a better life, really, in a lot of ways. I mean, so when I boil down my own passion and my own purpose, that's where it comes out. But when I get in trouble is when I get sucked into, trying to fit them into what I think I need to fit them into or whatever, you know what I mean? Rather than just being open and clear and communicating back and forth. That is a huge piece of this whole puzzle, because we're all trying to figure it out. And one of the best ways for me to do that is just to listen.
There was a great lesson in the Thursday coverage and the Saturday coverage for all age groupers with the Ironman World Championships. And it was when the top 3 female winners crossed the line and the top 3 men crossed the line. More lesson should be honestly had from that than the entire race itself. And there's no arguing that what Gustav Iden and Christian Blumenfeld have done and did over the weekend was unreal, right? And awesome, right? And very, and just, it's raising the level of our performance in triathlon for a good thing. But the reaction of those two when they cross the line, because they are so calculated in performance. I was listening to a YouTube video, like half of it was in German, half of it was in English with their coach and Sebastian Kienle. Anyways, it was unreal to listen to. But he's like, yeah, we calculated it down to like the minute, and we were maybe 2 minutes off, and this is what we expected, and we didn't expect this, and that's how they crossed the finish line. Like Gustav was happy, but he was like, I calculated it correctly. I completed. I am the Ironman World Championships, moving on to the Olympics. You saw Sam Laidlow in tears.
Mm-hmm.
Tears. 20 meters before. He couldn't believe it. He was so emotionally overtaken with the performance and the day and his dreams, and he didn't know how it was going to come together. He was just floored. You got Chelsea Sodaro coming in, is just like had no words. Right? He got like the awesome little image of her little daughter, like baby girl, running up trying to get the thing. I had no idea what was going on. And then you got Lucy Charles, unreal athlete, probably future Kona World Championship, crossing the line in tears, not because she got second, because she was so incredibly grateful that she was able to do it again. That's age grouping. That's us. We are those people, right? That's what should resonate, is the feeling of gratitude and surprise and love and sharing it with people, right? Like, her dad and her, for Chelsea's Darrell, it was her little small little team, her parents, her husband, her baby girl, for Sam Layla, it was his dad who was his coach, and all these things. It was like this emotional bond and connection that you could just feel. Like, I felt it. I didn't feel anything when I saw Gustav and Christian, cross the finish line. Of course, I mean, you don't have to be that way. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying for most age groupers, sustainability wise, yeah, you're never going to be either one of them. But none of us are. That's our age groupers. But in order to get what's the feeling you remember the most? You're talking about, playing multiple sports, and I played football and tennis in high school, and I would have definitely been a lot better at tennis if I had just not played football. But and I ended up being a lot better at tennis and walked on in college the first year, and then I was definitely at football. But all my memories of high school were from football.
Mm. Yeah.
Going state champion, like I would have missed all that. It's so, I think one of the biggest things that people focus on so much when they train is all they focus on is, what I'm giant quotes, giant caps, like 55 font, senior citizen text message mode is, how I don't want to get slower. I got to get a little bit faster instead of what am I missing out on? Burying myself for an hour in the trainer instead of going out on a 3-hour group ride and looking at fall leaves and not giving a shit. Maybe stopping for 2 hours on the way and grabbing a coffee, right? Chatting with buddies, heading out on the trails with some of your lady friends and talking about how much your husband suck or never, clean up the kitchen or do the laundry. It's like what everybody talks about, it's like,
air it out.
Do that. Yeah. Do that. Talk, connect. Right. And we're coming we've already, technology has already taken us that right. And then 2020 just like gave it roids and made everybody feel like they do everything on their own. You can't. I mean, you can, but how far are you going to go? There's that famous quote: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's why people burn out so quick in the sport. They try to do it alone and they go all in and they try to do it super fast and they're done. Right. And like you talked about, burn yourself out with work. Like when I work on Training Peaks, I'll work on 5 people and then I'll get up and go walk around, even if it's just like for a second. Then I'll sit back down again and I'll do it again and I'll get back up and I can chunk out, 30 or 40 in a day. And I would just try to do 15 or 20 straight and I wouldn't want to do anymore because I'm so burnt and my mind's fried and I'm done staring at the computer screen. And so, but which one did I do more of? The day that I stopped and paused after every 5 and took a walk. And that's how you should look at training. It's like, it's not about how fast and how far you can get, and that's like a huge issue I have sometimes with athletes. I'm like, we started working together and I'm like, I'm sorry you signed up for a half marathon or a marathon you have no business running.
Oh man.
No, I'm not going to give you 3-hour runs. Right? No, I'm not going to give you a 20-mile run. You're only prepared for a 10. Like your job as a coach isn't to appease your irresponsibility and irresponsible expectations. It's to create a happy and healthy, sustainable process of coaching and the athlete relationship that allows for your ability to be in the sport for as long as possible, because being in the sport as long as possible is how you get the best results. You don't get them in a year. It's like no one's an overnight success. The Ironman World Champions have been doing it for years. Gustav and Blumenfeld had this plan with their team like 5 or 6 years ago. And you got years ago, and they didn't jump sooner. They did it. They had a plan of what year to do it, and they stuck to it, and they crushed it, absolutely crushed it. But you got age group athletes who won't train, less than 5% of what they do, or pay attention to less details. They're like, yeah, I think I can do a marathon in a few weeks. No, you can't. Like, it's not responsible. Like, stop. You don't have to do it. It doesn't. But the hard part is the association piece, right? They associate, these endurance races, Ironman, 10-mile swims, 200-mile gravel rides, qualifying for Boston. That's their identity. That's their identity. Mm. And so if they're not chasing it, or at least going for it, they lose a piece of who they are. But that's not how it should work. It should Training should help you become who you are. Races shouldn't define who you are. And that is just a really, really hard concept for most athletes to wrap their brain around. Again, training should help you become who you are or who you want to be. Racing doesn't define that or make you who you are. It's a day. It's a span of hours, right? It's not some transformative, you're not getting beamed up. Okay. You're the same person. So you don't do the work leading up to it. You don't reap the benefits after it. And that's what leads to burnout. It leads to disappointment, depression, hatred of the sport, hatred of oneself. It's just, I don't understand and that's like, neither one of us are huge hard asses on our athletes, but that is one of the things I'm a stickler for is how you talk to yourself. Because how you talk to yourself is your reality and how things come to play. And I've told many athletes before, I was like, don't ever leave a comment like this in Training Peaks ever again. You can say it, you can think it, just don't put it here. But, frankly, don't say it anymore, because talking to yourself like that doesn't do anybody any good. You're talking yourself into a hole. You're training yourself. You're not training somebody. You're talking yourself into a hole. Negative conversations, negativity, it's toxic, and it just pollutes everything good in your life. But the great thing is we have a choice, right? You have a choice on how to approach training. You have a choice to enjoy it. You have a choice to go out and run without your watch. You have a choice to take your dog with you. You have a choice to go ride with buddies. You have a choice to, take your kid to the pool when you go. Like, you have those choices, right? Most age groupers would be better off, I think, training and acting like age groupers than trying to act like professionals. Because most professionals, in a lot of ways, when they're not training, act like age groupers. And that's what they're able to do it. They love it. They enjoy it. They have fun with it. They do it for, they're not so obsessed, and that's what they can handle so many hours and been doing it for so long. So, but it is, like we said, the good thing is that you don't have to be burnt out, right? A lot of it's a choice you made, or choices you didn't make, right? Weeks and months ago, of how to associate with things, how to go all in. And, you maybe had a bad race in November, or not November, but like, August. And you're like, I gotta get back. Like, I don't know what's happening again next year. Slow your roll. Doesn't need to be right now. Right. And that is like the biggest job of a coach. It's using a hammer, but it's not using the side you think. It's the side we do that. We use the other side. I won't say it's called, but we use the flip side of the hammer, where we usually pulling the nail out of you. We're not driving it home. The athletes drive their nails home on their own, right? The coach's job is to hold people back, prevent them from overdoing it, right? Overstressing, working too hard, going too many miles, because most athletes are going to do that all on their own, but it's your job to hold them back. So again, the bright side is that those are choices, and you can change those choices, and you can change those behaviors, you can change those patterns to have a happy and healthy year, not just next year, but today, tomorrow, rest of the year, right? Do me a favor, and instead of, if you're already planning on going next year, don't look at it as a 12-month year. Look at it as a 14-month year. Start it up. Get it cranking, right? Don't waste the last part of this year. Rejuvenate, refresh, create better boundaries, make a plan, right? What would you give? Like, you get 2 more months to train for this race. Would you take it? Hell yeah, I would take it. Especially ask people that in June, right? That are training for like a September or October race. Or like, all right, we pushed your race date back 2 more months. You're like, yes, thank you, right? Like, I've been procrastinating. This hasn't worked out very well. Thank God. Guess what? You got that right now. Get started, and make those changes.
Yeah, I definitely would have taken that last year, because I started late, and I just want to share this because what you're saying made me think of it. I went to Wisconsin this year. I started training late, maybe 2.5 months out or whatever like that, and made my decision, and I really enjoyed the process, and I got done. And honestly, I'm 58 racing up there, I guess. When I think of my grandfather at 58, the thought of him doing something like that, like, things have changed, and so many amazing things have happened with longevity and health and things like that over the years. It just blows my mind thinking of him at right around 60, trying to even like literally walk to the corner would have been one of my grandfathers. Would have been amazing. It's just like blows my mind. And I get up there within a couple months and get ready for an Ironman. I went into it honestly thinking I could probably do an all right job with it. Something similar to what I had done in the past. Turned out to be a really, really hard day. Probably my slowest one ever. But man, when I got done, I mean, I don't know if this is maturity or whatever, but I got to that second loop of that marathon, and that's when I decided I was going to wear that Badger blazer thing, because I was like, I remember thinking this, I was like, you know what, this race sucks. I was terrible, not terrible, but like for me, it was nothing like I hoped. You know, it turned out to be a really, really tough day, but I got that second loop, and I told Emily, I'm like, get that jacket. I wasn't going to wear it, but I feel like I earned it. And when I got done, it wasn't about my time. I just felt really good about the ability to be able to do that. And I think that's kind of carried over to me now. It's like, wow, sometimes you got to look around and go, man, this is pretty amazing that you can do something like that and be proud of that, instead of always like just wrapped around this idea of a certain time and what happens. And I know it's the ultimate, gauge or whatever, but sometimes you just, and I think that's what it is. It's like, man, I know I could do this or that, and then you don't do it, and then that's like a chipping away the other way. It kind of gives you this, man, defeating feeling, when it should be, how do you find, joy out of being able to do it? And it's really simple, but it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of us. So take that.
Yeah, for us included.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh, I know.
That's why we talk through these things. It's like we're talking through it because we're living it. We're breathing it. We see it, not just in ourselves, but in the athletes that we work with. It's definitely, I think we're one of the very few, at least triathlon related podcasts. We don't do guests but we're just like you guys, with different accomplishments, but we all have very, very, very similar common denominators in life, and a lot of them interchangeable. But yeah, so hopefully, today resonated with you, or some of you at least, and can catapult you to a much happier and healthy, not just 2023, but the rest of your life, right? As long as you want to do this for, that's the longer you can do it, the better off you'll be. And so think about that, when you plan your schedule, when you create expectations or goals, the longer you do it, the better you'll be. And that should be something that always, hopefully keeps you grounded. And that's why we do our podcast twice a week, to keep ourselves grounded and remind ourselves and talk through our own things. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Hit our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. Click on the coaching tab if you're looking for one-on-one coaching for, anytime, whenever. Check it out and reach out if you have questions. Also, we have plenty of camps. Our Texas camp is still open. That's in March. And then we'll be releasing our Ironman Wisconsin and Wisconsin 70.3 camp. That'll be August 3 through 6th next year in Madison, on the course, ready to rock and roll. So that will have a link to the show notes in that, when you can sign up, but you can check out, get more information on the website as well. As always, Mike's available. He's at CrushingIron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me specifically, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
Right. And if this podcast helped you maybe get out of a little funk or something, go out and do a little something, just something. Don't sign up for a marathon today, please.
That's right. Go tip somebody an extra $10 at your lunch meeting that does a halfway decent job.
Yeah.
Give a little bit. Don't just take things out on people that when you're mad or angry.
All right.
That's what we do.
That's
it. That's all I got. We'll see you on Monday. And last but not least, go Vols.
Oh yeah, go Vols, man. I'm looking for you guys.
You should. CBS.
You're feeling it, man. I like it.
Yep. I'm feeling it, dude. Feeling it.
We're at step. We'll be back to step one.
If we lose to Bama, I'll wear a red shirt on Tuesday for the podcast that no one will ever see.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll do the same for Michigan State. See ya.